Catus, Maximus here. We're going to talk about these Doyles here. These are the 14-inch in very tough packaging. I looked at a few of these on the shelf. I did kind of want another pair of 14-inchers. These, all I had is a pair of channel locks, which are actually really nice. And so kind of wanted a pair of these to be a beater pair and save my channel locks for the more finer cuts that I might want to do with some flush cutters. So I was noticing that they also have some 10-inch versions. These 14-inch versions, at least, are priced for $20, just a normal or yellow tag. I don't know if you can use coupons. I just went ahead and bought these and have my phone for the coupons. But that's a pretty good price. It's substantially cheaper than some more professional grade ones. But I was noticing on these 14-inchers that all of them, I noticed in the package, there was just a little bit of play in the handles. And I'm looking at the rivets here, and I noticed this through the package. See that light gap? The rivet hasn't been completely forged flush with the body of the tool. So there's some type of manufacturing issue where the rivet isn't being fully swaged. When they do these center rivets that are external, they should be fully forged down flush so they're really tight. And when they cool off, that's when they really pull together. And so on a good pair of pliers, I've really noticed that they are going to be stiff until you break them in a little bit, and that's how they maintain alignment. That's particularly important on flush cutters because when there's more play in the hinge pin, it means that these two jaws are getting cantered back and forth like so. There we go, like this. And so it hinders their cutting performance. The other thing, and you got to really look at the packaging, is making sure that these two sharp edges actually meet. Many of them, they were offset, and that's really unfortunate because it makes it kind of smush instead of really cutting, or kind of squashes it in a pinching fashion and doesn't work. They don't work as well as opposed to when they're really sharply aligned. And so you want to keep a check on that. Another thing, when you put them up to the light, I was noticing one of them, the jaws did not align. So when you would close it, you could just see some light passing through the jaws. And these you really want to have them be nice and tight and have a good fit. So definitely take a close look at these on the shelves. As far as the grind, it seems to be relatively okay. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it's reasonably straight, reasonably rounded. But the geometry still isn't. These are super thick jaws, and they're certainly going to be reasonably strong. But on these kind of end cutters, you really see, and these are the channel locks, you really want them to be pretty thin. So you put in a little bit less force when you're cutting, and because of the thinner jaws, they can get even closer to the surface. We can see that these channel locks are going to get probably 1/16 of an inch closer to the surface than these Doyles will. Another thing I was noticing, and this is kind of intrinsic because it's just on a video, but it's no joke. I was grabbing these and I thought, the jaws are pretty good. I was noticing that the stops don't come together at all. The whole purpose of stops on these is they're supposed to be just right at a point where the jaws come together, and then just a hair smidgen more, the stops will hit, and that prevents you from repeatedly putting way too much force on the sharp tips, causing them to dull and roll over. That's something that was you notice on the channel locks, is right where the jaws come together, the light gap disappears, and then the two stops come together. But the handle rigidity is really getting at me because I was grabbing these and I thought, those are okay. Those are look, these are some beefy, thick handles. That is like just a full square cross section there. Fairly beefy beam, but the steel is not as high quality, and the body of it is not quite as hardened as maybe the jaws are. All the jaws are going to be induction hardened, but I'm surprised on how much springiness we have in the handles here. Some people may think, oh, that's not too bad. But when you pick up like a nice pair like these channel locks, and we can see these aren't even square. They're have a wide grip surface, but they're kind of a T shape here. So they have less steel. Surprisingly enough, these are lighter weight than the Doyles. But when I grab these handles, these things are rigid. There's just no question. Just a huge amount of rigidity. I have to use two hands, and I still can't squeeze them as far as I can squeeze the Doyles with just one hand. It's really kind of caught me by surprise. And that's absolutely why these are just $20 junkers, and I'll save these for nice ones. So, you know, as far as any nice ones, we've got some tarpaulin type material here, and they should cut just perfectly like so. And I hope these doils seem like they ought to do it. And they are decent here, at least for that. If we take some other materials, you know, this is just a little piece of brass. Absolutely no problem. With 14-inch cutters, you use these for cutting off the ends of aluminum rivets. All sorts of steel wire. Obviously, if you're cutting things like bicycle spokes or piano wire, welding wire, it'll nick up the jaws because that wire is going to be as hard as, you know, any steel. But these are made for definitely heavy-duty cutting. Not just for flush cutting, but anytime you need a huge amount of leverage just because you have these massive handles and then the head is so close to the pivot point. Here I have a little idea here. What I'll do is I'll cut off a couple pieces of the solid core conductor. This may be a better way of noticing they're actually dinged up right from the factory. You know, even that little ding, just for some reason, some of the other Doyle tools are just fine, but like this ding that's right here, that's a brand new tool. And what's surprising is these are old channel locks I've had beating around for years in toolbox on top of other pliers. And there are no dings as deep as those Doyles are. And these have been beating around. So I really have a bit of suspicion that this is just a regular kind of a carbon steel, which they can get hardening out of, but definitely is not the same grade. So we're going to see how flush we can actually get these. I'll go ahead and just put these in here, and whoop, that's not going to be long enough. This will be a little bit better of an example. I'm just trying to do something that is would be considered, you know, reasonably accurate here. Is this doing a little flush cut? If I can get this to cooperate. Here we are. We're going to see how flush we can actually get with these. Let me get it down a little bit shorter so I can be right in the jaws here. Nice and flat. So that's as close to the surface as these Doyles are gonna get. Now let's see what the channel locks do. Now we're gonna do the channel locks. Channel locks I can feel are easier to cut with this because the jaws are sharper and have a little bit less cross section. There's the channel locks. That's pretty obvious. It's almost half the distance. This is just a little nub, and there's actually a significant piece sticking out of the Doyles. And I guess we'll just finish up with that. We'll do a couple cuts just so you can see a little bit closer. These ought to be pretty similar when looking at the ends. That'll be a Doyle cut. And this will be a channel lock cut. And let me get a little bit of zoom in here. There we go. There's our Doyle. I don't know if you can really see much of a difference there. This seems a little bit better on the channel locks. You can see how the Doyle's really kind of squishing it. Where the channel locks are actually providing just a little bit better of a cutting action, just because they don't have quite as blunt the edges. Anyway, that kind of sums it up, is that these Doyle cutters are not the greatest. They're decent for, I think they're acceptable for $20, and especially if you can get them for like 16 with a 20% off coupon or something like that. Kind of hard to find these big 14-inch ones, but you know, they are only $20 ones, and there are some significant differences between something like that and something that would be more of a professional grade. But man, these things are great. I mean, here's one of those aluminum drywall anchors. These cutters are just so tough, so much leverage that even something like that, you just hardly put any effort into it. And that's really one of the purposes of owning one of these things, is just the astounding amount of cutting power they really have. And they can be handy for things like any type of pulling operations, trying to pull nails. You just have to be careful not to cut the nail when you're trying to pull it. But you know, it's amazing for that, because you can just grab onto something, get a decent grip, and then just roll it up, and you just have a huge amount of leverage. And with a pair of Doyles like this, you don't mind using them as a hammer either. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. I actually just passed 15,000 subscribers, just noticed that, and wanted to say thank you so much. It's been heading towards 3 years of doing this, and I think it's just super. I really appreciate all the people who have tuned in to watching my cringy tool reviews, and I'll eventually get more progression on my channel, but that was kind of the start. Is I had a lot of tools, a lot of interest in tools, and just wanted to add information out there. I was always one of those people several years ago who just wished, when I'd search for something on YouTube, wish there were just a few more videos. So that was really the purpose of this channel, was just to provide more information. And eventually I'll be getting into certainly more entertaining and more kind of project related videos and how-tos. But just wanted to say thank you, and I really appreciate everybody who has subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.